Welcome to tonight's live stream. This is the first time we have streamed on this primary channel here, and hmm, I may have some minor volume issues. Hang on a second. Where's my? There we go. Yeesh. Slightly different setup. Anyway, as I was saying, this is the first time that well, not the first time I've streamed on this channel. First time I've streamed on this channel in a couple of years. Normally, I do my live streaming on my alternate channel, where we've been doing Sublime Text package and plugin development, and we're switching that up a little bit for the next little while, at least for the next couple of months. We're going to do the live streams here on this channel. Not quite as long, probably, as the other ones. We sort of play that by ear and see how things go. And where in normal streams that I would do are working on packages and plugin development, and people could ask questions about that. This is open to everything. And what we're really going to be doing here is just playing around with some Sublime Text stuff in general. This is something that I mentioned, I believe, in the introduction to this, which is to say that I have been programming for a long, long time. I got my first computer when I was in grade 5, and I've been noodling with stuff ever since. So when I got into using Sublime Text, I was swapped away from JetBrains related tools like IntelliJ and WebStorm and PyCharm and things like that into Sublime Text. It was a breath of fresh air. Those were very large, bloated, slow tools. Sublime is quick, lean, mean, small, and it was just so cool to see something like that. I've mentioned this on the Discord a lot of times. I bought my license within a day. I wasn't sure yet if it was something that I would want to keep using, but it was just so, like I said, so refreshing that the developers, I thought, deserved my support. And then, of course, I went on to become a Sublime Text fanatic. So I spent a long time working with Sublime Text for 4 years, learning the ins and outs as much as I could about how it works behind the scenes. I discovered that I really like helping people on the forum and on the Discord and on Stack Overflow, other places where people ask questions about Sublime Text. And then I started this YouTube channel, and I really started it because there was a lot of questions that people were asking fairly frequently, and I like to provide an answer that's not just the answer to this problem is go to this place and add a semicolon in this. I want to explain to people why they're having the problem so that they can grow, and next time they have such a problem, they would be able to resolve that problem themselves. Hello, Ben. Welcome to the stream. So I really created the channel specifically so that when someone asked a question about stuff, I could say, just give a short little answer and then say, this is, here's a longer form explanation of what's going on. So I wouldn't have to keep typing stuff or going back and finding links. And it took off. I'm kind of surprised by that. I guess I'm really niched down. YouTube really favors channels that tend to be sort of local experts, if you will, and most Sublime Text content seems to be mine, except for videos about which packages and stuff to use. But I started doing live streams on my secondary channel because I wanted to do more work with plugin development and Sublime Text, but I found it hard to focus myself on that because I was doing a bunch of other things. I was a hobby game developer. There's a whole bunch of little projects that I was working on, and switches, it's a common thing. Everybody has like 1,000 projects they want to do, and five of them are ones that can hit the top of the list at any one time. Well, I thought I'm going to live stream myself, and that's going to be make me, accountable for what it is that I'm doing, because I'm going to be live. I'm going to have to do something, and people are going to see me doing it, so I'm going to have to do something. And that worked too well, because now this is the only thing that I do really on my live streams was plugin development, and I really miss working on other stuff. So we're swapping this up here. I'm going to move the live streams to this channel, as I said in the announcement video, for a couple of months, see how things go. I think it helps drive support for the channel here at large, because I have more subscribers here than I have on the other one, which is entirely my fault. I'm terrible at self-promotion at the best of times. I'm getting better at doing that sort of thing. But uh, yeah, so what I am doing, and I can throw this in the chat as well. I am doing live streaming on Twitch as well, and it seems like Nightbot might potentially be a little bit laggy tonight, but theoretically that should eventually pop something up. If not, we can always throw something in there. And on Twitch, I'm doing development live streams just in general. It could be something Sublime Text plugin related, could be something completely different. It could be us fixing bots. This is the first time that I've done stuff here. There we go. So over there on that, if you are a Twitch person, you can follow along there. I'm going to be streaming more frequently there than I have been here because it's just going to be, anything and everything. And recently we've been working on stuff for getting stream overlay things working. I'm going to continue working on that. But for tonight, uh, the idea at large is just to play with some packages. Now, one of the questions I get asked fairly often is, what packages I suggest for certain languages. Like how would I set up Sublime Text to work with PHP, for example, is one that I've been asked a few times. And I don't really have an answer for that per se because I don't use PHP. And I tend to use what comes right out of the box for Sublime Text, right? So that's the sort of thing we're going to play with here. Different, packages, different setups, ostensibly to come up with content or ideas and working through. You can see really the behind the scenes of how this stuff works, because hopefully, if you watch the videos, it looks like I more or less know what I'm talking about. But that does take, a bunch of work and fumbling and trial and error behind the scenes sometimes to figure stuff out. For example, the video that went up on Monday there with build systems. I had everything all planned out, and then when I did the dry run through of the screencasting part, that's the bit where I realized that Sublime 4 is actually a lot cooler and that it actually will restart a build. I had completely forgotten that was the case, so I got to add that stuff in. But it caused me a little bit of consternation when I was testing with Sublime 4 and things just seemed to work. So that's the sort of thing we might have here. If you're watching and you have any questions whatsoever about me, the channel, Sublime Text, packages in general, feel free to go ahead and shout those out into the channel. And yeah, I have here a couple of questions that people tend to ask that I thought we might get out of the way as well, out of the way, so to speak. And then we're going to jump into sort of playing around with LSP, which is, I think, one of the more frequently asked, tutorial videos for how to set this thing up. And it's not something that I use. Um, so we can see exactly how well this might go for someone that's completely new to it. I know LSP exists. I have a good idea of what it does and how it does what it does, but I've never actually tried to set it up. I've never actually tried to use it. So this is the sort of thing that I would normally do off camera, play with this, set stuff up, try to see exactly how these sorts of things go. What are the sorts of pitfalls a person might have? Things like that. Wait just a second here. I'm going to switch that monitor like that because I have mail running on that computer and it is constantly flashing. The calendar is updating something fierce. So I have, again, here just a few questions. These are questions that have been culled from comments that I receive in my YouTube videos and in direct messages on Discord and also just in emails because I do have a public website at odatnerd.net. Apologies, I don't have a lot of lower thirds going right now. It's been a very busy week. So this is just some of those particular questions in no particular order. The first one is, when will Sublime Text 4 be released? That's a very popular question that's been asked quite a few times since Sublime Text 4 video started showing up on the channel after I asked John if it was okay if I did videos on that. And the answer to that is just going to be when it's ready. Sublime Text 4 will be made available. The developers aren't saying any date and time, and I don't blame them because I'm a software developer myself, and you can get people real unhappy with you when you do the best estimate you possibly can for when something is going to be available, and then something happens that's untoward, development doesn't quite hit the point that you want it to be, and you slip that date even by a little bit, people get real angry about it. Of course, people get a little angry about not being told either. It's a little bit of a crapshoot there. But again, if you are interested in using Sublime Text 4 and you have a Sublime Text 3 license, get thee to the Sublime Text Discord and go into the announcements channel. You can be playing with that thing right now. It is a development build, but it's a pretty stable development build. I have a video on the channel about how you could run the two versions side by side if you were worried about that sort of thing. But no time like the present to get in on that sort of thing. The next question that I get asked is this a bedroom studio? And the answer to that question is kinda. Technically, this is a bedroom. The apartment that I live in is a two-bedroom apartment, but this particular room is set up as my office. The desk I'm sitting at right now is my actual work desk. I work from home. I have for quite some time, for over 6 years now. I think I've been working right here out of this very room. And prior to that, I was working out of a different home office. I have one coworker that works in the company in my geographical area. So he used to live not too far from here, and he rented out part of his house as an office, and our office was in there. And he moved way up north. I was unwilling to do a 16-hour commute every day, so I started working from home. So this is actually a bedroom, but really it's an office. We can see in the background there is the area where I record my videos. For a while, I was doing them right here on the desk. And I also have a piano, guitars on the wall. I am a nascent musician. I know enough guitar stuff to strum chords and sing badly. Ditto on keyboards. Um, but yeah, so I, of course, have aspirations to make the area even better, but there are limitations to what I can do in a room that is also dedicated to my office. Uh, Possibly the most popular question I get asked is, where can I buy one of those shirts? Of course, I'm not wearing one of them right now, but we're of course referring to the shirts that have the Sublime Text logo or the Sublime Merge logo on the front of them, or the one that I custom created that is the Sublime Text logo with my head orbiting around it because, I am a Sublime Text nerd and fanatic. The answer to that is you would have to print those shirts yourself, which is how I got mine. There's not a store that sells them, at least not one that I'm familiar with that is official. Will Bond, one of the developers for Sublime HQ, asked in the Discord a little ways back about merch and things like that. There was a reception that people would like shirts and other Sublime Text merchandise, and he gathered some information on some places that it would be possible to create such merchandise for people to sell. Sublime HQ is not trying to make money off of a shirt, so really the barrier to whether or not there would be official merchandise is how much work it is because they're busy writing Sublime Text 4. They don't want to be spending time shipping T-shirt orders, and he has some information on that. Last I heard, he was potentially going to go and get that rolling. That's really all we know about that. Probably happen sometime soon, but there is a lot of Sublime Text work going on as well, and changes with package control that he is working on. So we have that going on. Here's a popular question: how do I record video inside of Sublime Text, or how do I screencast inside of Sublime Text, such as this window here or in the little one? And this is just an editing trick. Sublime doesn't have the ability to do this. Exactly, and as Ben is pointing out there, they're also busy being developers, and by all means, spend more time on that. Shirts will come. Sublime HQ has a team of 6 developers, if I remember correctly. Will, Ben, John, David, Tim, and Dylan. And Carrie is their salesperson. Not all of the team works on all of the products, though, I don't think. There's some people that are working primarily on Sublime Merge, some that work specifically on Sublime Text. There's probably a tiny bit of overlap there because they do share a bit of a common code base. But it's a small team, but before Will Bond joined, there was only one developer on the team. So it's seen some immense growth just in the last few years. So, and by the way, how's the interactive response? I set this, I think, to low latency. In my pre-stream test, it still seemed to be roughly 10 seconds, but I'm not sure how that compares to Twitch. Hopefully, it's a little bit better than it was on the other channel if you happen to have been watching back then. Uh, so to get back to the question, yeah, this is just an editing trick. Basically, I have a color scheme that's set to make the content of a file bright green that I can chroma key out, and then I can overlay this on top of footage, unfortunately. Although I do every now and then pepper Ben with the idea that Sublime Video is the next great feature, or the ability for it to actually send the frames that it's drawing to the screen out to FFmpeg to be able to capture screen stuff from directly inside, which I gather is sort of kind of possible a little bit maybe as far as the way screen captures are done for the web page. I can't quite remember how that all works out. What font do I normally use here in my videos and in my live streams? I use a font called Yoshevka. It is a freely available font. It is completely open source, and it is, in fact, the only font that I've ever come across that is programmatically generated, and it's programmatically generated by Node.js source code. I'm going to post this link here. This font, if you go to that link in my Google Drive, I believe, right? Yeah, it will have a little bit of a description that has a link to the place where the main font actually is. The version that I have that you will find linked there has had the weight of the font adjusted a little bit because I found the base one a little bit too skinny for my taste. I like characters to be a little bit wider. You could do the same thing as well. As I say, this is a freely available font, and inexplicably, it's generated via Node.js source code. So now you can tweak up some parameters, type a node command, and walk away for 5 hours and come back, and TrueType fonts are laying there. There's a couple of different versions of the font in there. The ones that have term in the name are for use in a terminal. The only difference between that and the other version of the font is it doesn't have ligature support because that seems like it would get in the way inside of a console. And I use stylistic set 9, which is what you'll find in there, but there are a lot more options in the main font if you were to go look at the page. And lastly, the other question I get asked a fair bit about my Sublime Text setup is what color scheme and theme do you use? And I use the adaptive theme in Sublime Text. Basically because when I started using Sublime, the sidebar would be very white, except for in the adaptive theme, and it didn't mesh well with the color scheme that I used, which is Monakai in Sublime Text 3 and Mariana in Sublime Text 4. And those are respectively the defaults for the color schemes in Sublime Text 3 and Sublime Text 4. The theme is actually named default. That is the default in Sublime Text 3, and in Sublime Text 4 it would be default and default dark. I think it might actually default to auto, and then it's one of those two. But I've just always had it set to essentially the dark version of it. I have played with other themes in the past. I could never really get the font, not the font, the tab shapes never quite seemed to resonate with me all that much. And color schemes, I've tried a few, but it did just coming back to the default. Now, in my videos on the channel, I use the defaults because if you were to fire up one of these versions of Sublime Text right now, that's more or less what you would see. The theme would be slightly different, but the color of the text would be the same. And the font I wasn't want to say the font, the shape of the tabs is set to defaults as well. As a matter of fact, now the Sublime Text 4 has the default and default dark. I might switch to that for the videos. That's not what I use here under Linux, as we'll see in just a minute. And as you can sort of see the version of the file the interface that I have sitting around me right now. Back when I first started using Sublime Text 4, that wasn't an option. That's been a very recent thing. So again, if you have any other questions about stuff, feel free to go ahead and drop those on into the chat as well at any point. But let's go ahead and jump to the desktop. And I have a new version of that that's not quite so boomingly loud, but I did not copy it to this machine in time. Yeah, that's not too shabby as far as these things go. So I said the thing that we're gonna look at here, let's bring this in, is to go to package control, because one of the things I get asked quite often is about the LSP package, which thank you. Yeah, I don't know a lot about, art in general, but I can animate boxes like nobody's business. I painstakingly vetted a lot of different swoosh sounds before I found just the right one for that. Yeah, it may or may not look fairly similar to various tutorials on the subject, but I'm learning a new bit of software, which is actually something that has been asked a couple of times, but not recently, and it didn't fall in my list of questions. But the tools that I use to create the videos that I do are Camtasia and HitFilm Pro and Reaper for audio. I record the screen with Camtasia, and I record video footage with my camera on the tripod, that which is sort of over my shoulder there ish, uh, sort of cut off now by the chat. Record the audio in Camtasia in the headset and also in the camera, and I use HitFilm to blend or to sort of sweeten the image, if you will, apply color corrections as it comes off of the camera, crop things up the way that I like them, and match it with the audio that is recorded separately, because this is a very expansive room here. And I use Reaper to sweeten the audio as well. So it's a little bit of a three-tool operation, but it seems to work pretty well. I'm getting a lot faster at it. But for a while, I was using something different. Instead of HitFilm Pro, I was using Blackmagic Fusion for my graphics. That's what I use for the introduction, for example. So if you've seen older videos versus newer videos where the transition and the intro looks the same, but the font is different, I recreated that in HitFilm Pro. And part of learning how to use that software was creating myself the little transition there. And I'm going to continue with that in live streams, creating more assets as I try to get a little more professional, if you will, about my live streaming, because it's going to be more than just staring at a screen. So, yeah, whoops. One of the questions we get asked quite frequently is, LSP. And if you're interested in this, you're going to want to jump into the Sublime Text Discord. There's a dedicated channel to LSP. The developers of said package actually hang out in there and can answer questions. I don't use Adobe products, no, but I do use Affinity products, Affinity Photo, Affinity Designer, and Affinity Publisher. That's a good point. Thumbnails for my videos I create in Affinity Publisher, which is technically a desktop publishing application. But basically, because it has master pages, I can get the standard layout and just modify the text and have a list of all of the files there. Basically, Affinity products are sort of semi-light versions of the associated Adobe products, which would be, I guess, Illustrator, Photoshop, and InDesign, if I had to guess. But instead of being a constant subscription, they're a one-off purchase for, I think, like $50 US. Although potentially right now, if it's still going, it could be 50% off, because they were doing for COVID at the beginning of COVID, and then again a little bit ago, they were offering 90 days free and a 50% off sale. I don't have anything against Adobe products per se, except that I'm not a creative enough person to get enough use out of those tools to be able to, to to get value out of the subscription. And hello, Ashwin. Welcome to tonight's stream. So yeah, that's pretty much the thing there. What the needs that I have for doing anything with photographic images, Affinity Photo works quite well for. Any graphics that I create are going to be vector graphics of some sort generally because I'm terrible at drawing. Although I do have a tablet, which is something that I've sort of been meaning to use more in videos to mark up the screen to point things out, but I haven't gotten around to that yet. So I would use a designer for that instead of Illustrator. And again, as I use the desktop publishing solution to create my thumbnails. The nice thing is all three of those as a suite sort of work together, so you can easily swap files between all of them because they all share a same file format. Here under Linux, if I have to do anything image related, I use GIMP. But because I don't do that very often, mostly what I do in GIMP is stare at the tool palette and try to remember which one of the icons is the one for the thing I'm trying to do. Oh, yes, that's right. There was a story about brackets being deprecated. To be honest, I thought that had happened a while back. There was a point pre my Sublime Text days, I think. There was. And I don't know how much I've ever mentioned that in other streams and such, but I was using at the time as my development tools JetBrains products. So I was doing a lot of Java at the time. So I was using IntelliJ for that. I had their uh, Toolbox subscription, which is sort of like the Adobe subscription. As long as you have it, you have access to all of the tools. So I was using IntelliJ for Java. I was using WebStorm for some web things that I was doing, such as the game that we previewed a couple of Twitch streams back. The what's the no, I created the Dr. Mario clone in Sublime, but the other ones were done in WebStorm. Basically, it's a Java-based IDE platform for stuff, and I sort of was coming to an end of wanting to use those tools as a matter of their ideology changed a little bit because they went from one-time purchase to a little bit of a subscription model, which would have been okay, but they were doing it such that if you bought a subscription today, you would have a year's worth of access. And then at the end of the year, you could subscribe again to get the next set of updates, or you could decide not to, but you would have the version of the software that was available at the time where you purchased it and not at the end of the 1 year period, which sort of rubbed me the wrong way a little bit. And also, they were saying that it was going to help them fix bugs faster, and I gave them like a year and a half, and that didn't seem to be the case for the tools that I was using. So I was sort of edging out on them. And at that point, that's when I started looking at things like Atom brackets because I heard people talking about it. And that may be the two big things. I don't think I looked at Visual Studio Code at the time. It may not have been a thing. Part of what would have stopped me from using something is if I could run it on the Linux that I was using at the time, which is this version here, which is Slackware. But I seem to recall that brackets seemed like it was not necessarily on the way out, but not being actively talked about at the time. But well, Phone Gap. Is that something that one of those products for creating web applications and wrapping them up for putting them on a phone? I should say one JetBrains product that I was very pleased with was AppCode, um, which is their Mac. It's a Mac OS only tool for creating um, iOS applications. For a couple of years, I was doing that as at work, and I found those tools vastly superior to Xcode because they were closer to the way that I like to work. And really, that's what comes down to, for me, what comes down to choosing a tool. It comes down to what works most like how I'd like to work, and can I make this tool work the way I'd like to work, or do I have to work the way someone else decided that this is how the workflow should go, which is why Sublime is so awesome because it's so completely customizable. You can really, make it be your own specific tool. Yeah, I I think I there's something else that was, maybe I'm even thinking of that one and I've just forgotten the name, but I think there were a couple of things like that back in a bit. I did a lot of iOS development for my company on iPad, and privately, just for my own projects, I did a lot of work on writing Android applications because I'm an Android guy and the company wanted an iPad application. And I have to say, having experienced the two, I really dig that iOS applications, at least at the time, were written in Objective-C, which was a language that I already knew because I use it at work. And the fact that there's really only two devices for you to deal with, an iPhone and an iPad, and most of the time the differences between them are abstracted away so that you can just write one thing and you know it's going to work on everyone's device. Vastly, vastly superior, and the design of their API to the API that was available for Android, and having to use Java, and the tooling was a pain in the butt. And back in the day, maybe better now, it's been the better part of 10 years since I've done any Android development. Uh, if you needed to use an Android emulator, it was quite a slow and painful process. Whereas for iOS, it would, the tooling literally was a picture of an iPad right on your desk and everything would run inside of it. So it's sort of a, give and take kind of operation there. If I could create an Android application with the tooling for iOS, that would be the perfect thing. And I think at that time I was sort of looking into different things you could do with uh, things like phone gap, and I want to say there's something else, but I can't quite pull it. It's been so long, where basically you would create. It was, I guess a way to put it would be, it was like a tiny version of Electron, a tiny little custom made native application that would just display web pages. As a matter of fact, I think I ended up creating some applications like that just because it's sort of easier to do that, not with those tools, but like a little ebook, EPUB reader, because EPUB is essentially HTML. Oops. So, LSP is one of those packages that, as I say, I don't really use. Um, Although people tell me that I should, and I really should because I need to create some videos on how to use it. So we're going to sort of play with that now. I've never installed this or used it myself. So if you're in the chat and you have used something like this, feel free to shout out what you know or suggestions or whatever if you see me doing something particularly idiotic. Um, but I do know what it's supposed to be for, as I said, and the technology that sort of underlies what it actually does, which is that there's an external custom made server process that is specific to any particular language you might want to work with, that has the sophisticated knowledge of being able to analyze code, to figure out its structure, to provide API type services like finding code problems or being able to refactor things by having specific knowledge of the code that isn't possible in the core of Sublime, because Sublime isn't a tool that's dedicated to just C or just Python. It has to have a general enough mechanism that it can work for any language that's thrown out there, including ones that the developers of Sublime don't provide packages for out of the box, like something that was asked for recently in the forum, VHDL, which is uh, not something I'm familiar with, but that's, every language that a person needs is going to be different. Anything that tries to natively have the intelligence for all languages is going to be pretty bad. So having dedicated tools for that are great. And LSP, this stands for Language Server Protocol, I believe, by the way. Oh, I guess it says it right here on the screen. Boop. Um, is a package that communicates with said external process. And I think for me, the couple of reasons why I don't use this per se is I'm an old fuddy duddy, as you can see from my beard. So since I've been programming since I was in like grade 5 with Basic, and then I moved on to Pascal and C and C++ and Java and JavaScript, and I've written in Python. I spent a long time writing code in assembly. I've probably forgotten a lot about a lot of the languages that I have used in the past. But back in those days, although there were IDEs, like Turbo Pascal was actually a DOS COM file, which for those of us that aren't ancient like me, is basically an application that is smaller than 64K, because back in the days of DOS, you had to allocate and use RAM in segmented chunks, unlike the flat memory model that we have these days. The joys of old timey 8-bit computers. And if you wanted to do anything with Python with Pascal, Turbo Pascal, for example, all of your code was and editor was and compiler inside of that one tiny little thing. There weren't auto completions or code intelligence or anything like that. So I spent a lot of years just never really utilizing that. And then I spent years doing stuff with, uh, as I said, the IntelliJ products, which are LSP-ish after a fashion. They don't have an external server process, but because it's basically a platform. There's a main application written in Java, and then you add packages into it, and their package system is really rather extensive. I tried a couple of times to write one. Uh, Quite tricky, very powerful, but not nearly as simple as Sublime's ability to just throw a simple command in, because there's a lot of structure to it. But that gives it the ability to completely parse a file into the abstract syntax tree it needs to have specific language intelligence. As a matter of fact, a lot of the JetBrains type software is the same platform with just different sets of packages plugged into it. So if you get their flagship product, you really just have the ability to install any package you like. Yeah, I sort of feel the same way, which is kind of why I wanted to switch my live streaming over into regular development, because I have basically been using Python for pretty much all of my development for the better part of at least 2 years now, because I've been streaming for 2 years. Um, Historically at work, the product that we work on is written in Objective C because of its roots in the Next computers way back in the day. We used to have the teeny tiny little Next cube sitting on the desk, which is why I got tapped for the iOS project, because I was one of two people in the company that actively knew that, because we actually write full-blown server software in the thing. Use Rust indeed. That could be something to play with in a stream. For the last year and a bit, I've been taken off of that project and working on stuff in JavaScript and Node.js, which isn't really my bag per se, because I'm more used to using languages that are closer to the meta, like C or C++ or Rust. So it's going to be fun to get into that sort of mindset of working on other things like that. Maybe even some game development. I don't know. For the next little bit, I'm going to be playing a little bit more with the stuff we've been doing in other Twitch streams. And I want to try this again. We'll see. I may have broken this particular command. I'm like, oh, there we go. Okay. Uh, if you were to watch on the Twitch, you can see how we actually built this little mechanism. Again with trying to get me to remember everything I've forgotten about SBNF. I forgot that you wrote that in Rust, to be honest. How close is Rust to being like Go? And I don't mean in like a syntaxy kind of way, but one of the things that sort of irritated me about Go is the setup for everything. Like, I'm as a longtime C programmer, I expect that I just install GCC, and then I can write code and do stuff. But Go seemed to be, everything, or at least everything that I've done deployed with Go required very special. You need to have all of your code in this directory and download, tooling inside of there specific to the project and stuff. I mean, I'm really showing my ignorance there because I haven't done very much with Go. Basically, I've set up some Git. Shoot, what's it called? Git T is and Gogs. I was setting those things up. It's probably like a super cool language. I never really looked at much of the code. It just sort of, the tooling seemed a little weird to me. And I know that for Rust, you had to, or one of the things you'd set up is the playground to be able to fiddle with it right in the web, which I think is how I was playing with it. But Rust is like Go in the same way that C++ is like Java. Huh. I see. Definitely not adverse to fiddling with new stuff. I mean, uh, I learned how to create Android applications not because I wanted to create the next great Android application. I just had a phone and I wanted to see if I could create an application for it, right? Back in the day, I had a Palm Pilot. I did the exact same thing there. I figured out the how you would create programs for a Palm Pilot and the tooling that were resulting in that. Just because I wanted to know how that was done, and I've learned a lot of languages for a similar reason. So I love learning stuff for the sake of learning stuff, which is why in the Twitch streams, when we learned how to create the big brain energy, there are better ways to do what we did. And as a matter of fact, in tomorrow's stream, I'm going to start looking at that. There's something called Node CG that's sort of purpose built for the thing that we were jerry rigging. But I wanted to know myself before I worked with something like that. Big brain energy. What how the internals of something like that might look. So that may be fun as well. I don't know that it's necessarily fun to watch a stream of a guy trying to compile Rust code hello world style. Maybe it is. I don't know. We'll see where Twitch life brings us, right? Things on my YouTube channel are more about teaching, and this is kind of like that as well. Maybe that could be my Twitch persona as well. So realistically, I think I've looked through the README for LSP, but that's pretty much all I've ever done. Now the question here is, should I do this in Sublime 4 or should I do this in Sublime 3? And if I do it in Sublime 4, should I... That is, in fact, one of the things that I'm planning on doing. And I guess, we could say, for the purposes of things, I think the replays are still up for anybody that's interested in looking at it. But the magic of this whole operation working is that Nightbot is a bot that's running out somewhere in the cloud. You can add custom commands to it. This particular custom command is pinging a private web server here in my house that is running software called Node-RED, which is a node-based, uh, yeah, we won't go into that right now. Sort of a visual programming based way to pass messages around. It was made, I think, to sort of study the idea of visual programming. It's really become big in home automation. That software is running a WebSocket server, and that command that I just ran in the console pings that server with that command, which then sends a WebSocket message to a web page that's loaded inside of OBS, which tells it that it's time to display the thing. So it's like a real, as I'd say, a Rube Goldbergian method of doing that. There's software that we're going to be looking at next called Node CG, which is kind of like Node-RED in as much as it's a Node.js application that just sort of runs. And you can put any sort of JavaScript code in it you want. It automatically runs in the server. And for every panel you create, there is also an overlay, i.e., the big brain. Now, the magic of this particular software is it does everything that I just said, but it all does it itself. You don't have to write that mechanism yourself. And it has a lot of two-way syncing communication. So whereas we had to send a specific message to the web page to say, please display the brain, uh, Node.cg is less like that and more like Angular and other such toolkits, if you've ever used those, where there are specific objects in your code and you say, this is a text replicator named Bob. And then inside of the overlay, you say, I'm a text replicator and I'm named Bob. And the software takes care of all of the details of syncing content back and forth. So that's going to be something fun to play with there. And yeah, maybe we could do stuff like that. There are more brain images than just the one, so it would be, we're going to need to be able to have something more meaty to deal with than just displaying the brain. So yeah, I guess we do the right and left, or positions on the screen, or different colors, or something along those lines to make a more meaty example. I'm going to say it's probably not super terrible to do this just in my standard Sublime Text distribution, right? So we're going to want to run package control, install package, and select LSP. Well, I can do that. Let's toggle the menu off, though. One of the things I'm sort of looking forward to is the ability to toggle the menu off in Sublime Merge as well. I don't use it super often. I can call it if I need it. And because I really like this display here, but it is a little bit big because I'm not using GNOME. It's a nice little trade-off. Let's install a package. And we'll see what we can see. I guess one of the things we also have to decide is what sort of language we're going to play with too. Take your time loading repositories. It's been a while since I've installed a package. I run my Sublime Text particularly lean, by the way, not for any particular reason. I have no problem with installing packages. I just generally don't. Let's say the Python package that ships with Sublime is the support that I use for Python. That it has its own build system. It has the syntax. That's really all I need. I've never used Anaconda, for example, except to install it to help people that are having problems with it. Let's install LSP. And the message we get is, thanks for trying this out. This package is a client implementation of the language server protocol. This is a protocol that defines how language servers and clients should talk to each other. It enables high quality code complete, signature help, go-to definition, accurate find references, and more. Sort of one of the things I don't like about Visual Studio Code is its IDE features get like too in my way at times. Maybe because I'm used to not working with them. So it'll be interesting to see how that works here. I think I nailed this down at one point. The thing that really annoys me about the way that Visual Studio specifically uses an auto completion panel is that once it opens the panel, it's pretty much committed to inserting one of the completions in there. And whereas in Sublime, I might be used to the idea of popping the panel up, and I don't want an error, or the panel pops up, I don't want one of the completions, so I just go ahead and keep going, and the panel will just automatically close. But on Visual Studio, it ends up picking some completion that I didn't expect and injecting text in, and then it actually slows me down because I spend more time undoing it. Indeed, it's finally seeing the light of day here. And I can't comment on how long it might be on here, or if I might actually use it for anything. But I'm not adverse to installing something like this. And if I want to create videos for how to work with it, I'm definitely going to need to understand better a little bit how it works, right? And we're going to need to open that too, I suppose, right? So let's go ahead and do that. Let's pop that up in there. And pardon me. Okay. So what we know is this package by itself doesn't really do anything because it's going to want to talk to something external, and that's the thing that we have to do next, right? So that's what this thing is telling us. So this is actually slightly different documentation than what I was looking at before, I thought. Oh, I guess I was just looking at I was just looking at this, but I wasn't looking at it on this machine, so it looked slightly different. This is the README for the package. We installed the stable version. I'm not interested in development versions right now, I don't think. Or at least I probably am, but if I was going to create a video for somebody about how to use LSP, I would probably get them to install this version and not go into how you manually install something that's actively under development. Follow the installation steps for a language server. All right, so we need to decide on what kind of language we're going to do something with here. And I guess that kind of depends on us having some sort of code that we could do something with. I think, my brain. Um, Build and install from source. Okay, build and install from source. I mean, that's probably something that I would do. If I was going to use this myself, I would probably be using it for these languages. But I don't know that I want to get into building and compiling stuff like this from source. What also does it mean that this was written for Clang, but much of it applies to CQuery and CCLS? How much is much? Hello, sir. I'm doing well. Welcome to the stream here on the main channel. Have you ever watched one of the streams on the other channel, or are you just new to this stream here? Ow, pardon me. Or not this stream here. This channel, which this is the first one on the channel, I should say. And thank you, Nightbot. I'd really like to know why it seems to run a little bit slower on YouTube than it does on Twitch. That seems like a little odd. If you do have any questions, let me know. We're just basically, if you just joined us, we're playing around with the LSP package. It's the first time I've ever used it. It's a topic that's going to be covered on in videos at some point on the channel. So it seemed like a good idea to use it and research it to figure out how one might go ahead and install it. Oh, well, welcome to the stream. Here we're going to be doing Sublime Text related stuff here. Which could be anything, could be working with packages like we are here, maybe a little bit of plugin work, a little bit of configuration work, answering people's questions. I also will be doing regular live streams over on Twitch, which is something you're going to find here, if I could type, where I'll be doing regular software development stuff. Making a website and starting up a company. Well, I don't know that I can help anybody start up a company, but web-related stuff, perhaps. I am more of a software back-end kind of person. So I'm more experienced with creating the server side of things than the graphical face. Python or Lua? Do I have Lua installed on this machine is a question. I do not have Lua installed on this machine. I can provide perhaps some help in web development, but I'm not super versed in that particular field. Hang on here. Oh. Let's do a thing. We're going to Oh, we're at 5.4.2. My goodness. let's set some stuff up. I'll move this terminal to this side so that it's not obstructed by the chat. We will be doing web development stuff in the next few Twitch streams on my Twitch channel. So that might be a good place to hop in and ask questions as well when I'm more actively fiddling with that sort of stuff. I've built my own website, which is bizarrely not something that I added as a command in the bot. It's odatnerd.net. But I haven't really created much of anything that's, traditional web development like Node.js, Angular, Interactive that's public. There's a project that I've been working on for my company for the last year and a bit that's been in that regard, but nothing that I could show, unfortunately. Okay. Let's see. We'll let that run. I work right now for a company called SS&C, which is a multinational company. It's got offices all around the world. It's primarily a wealth management and financial related company. So what I've worked there for 20 years, and primarily what I spent 99% of my time there doing was creating a server software infrastructure that connects, or sorry, I should say, the main stock exchanges of the world, like the New York Stock Exchange and such. We have direct network lines from their servers to our servers. So anytime anybody buys or sells a stock, we get an instantaneous message come across. And what my part of the company does, what me and my coworker have done, is create software that reads those messages, normalizes them, processes them to determine what the current price is for everything trading all throughout the world. And then my company at large sells that data to people and sells them the tools to use that data to manage their portfolios. For example, banks that are working with mutual funds and such. The chat that appears in the thing there is probably delayed a bit because it's got to relay around before it eventually gets inside of there. Let me test this myself just to see. If I type something and hit enter, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's not even appearing in my local version of this that quickly as well before it eventually goes. I don't think that's encoder lag because even the version of the web page that's local here, which doesn't have the delay before it appears to the stream, isn't quite as good as it could be. I might be able to dial the latency on the stream down, which I will try for the next one if I can. In the meantime, what's the quality of things looking like here? Is everything mostly readable and such? I think we do not want to. That'll do the business. Okay. I think we want this to be. Oops. I think we'll do that. Um, Traditionally on my live streams, I've had the latency set to the next level up from where it is right now because way back in the day when I first set everything up, there was various underlined red boldy text about how things could very quickly go all wonky for the viewer if you had that set to too low of a latency. But I think things have gotten better, and my network connection is a lot better than it was before. Mm. Okay, so all we need to do is add that to the path. So there should be a local Lua bin. And normally I could install that in user local. Not that this is related to anything Sublime Text per se. This is just me installing Lua because I haven't done it before. But I happen to know from experience, I compile my own version of OBS, and their build system for that goes a little bit wonky. What would you like to know about me, sir? Uh, I don't mind answering questions if so you don't have to, delete your message or whatever. I'm just, let me know what you'd like to know about me. I have been a software developer for a long-ish time. Um, if I started up this particular software here and said that it's 2021 and I was born in 1974, then that's how old I am right now, apparently, or will be when my birthday comes. And assuming that a person is 5 when they go into kindergarten, and I was in grade 5 when I got my computer, that would be 10. I have been writing software in some fashion or other for 37 years, give or take, in a ton of different languages, over a ton of different operating systems. I've written programs in assembly language for DOS way back in the day when my first computer had a super exciting 10 megabyte hard drive. Two of them, in fact. The biggest hard drive you could buy at the time, literally, they were like this tall. Uh, and I've just been fascinated with computers ever since. I was actually brought into computers by a friend of mine who I mentioned. I think it was in somebody's live stream, not on my own. But round about the time I was 10 or so, I had a friend who's a few years older than me. He was about 3, 4 years ahead, who got me interested in software development and in electronics and electrical engineering. And actually, electronics was the thing that I wanted to go into. I like both of those things, but electronics was a lot more of a pull for me, if you will. Um, so uh, I spent my time in high school in the town where I grew up doing electronics classes, and I was in a small town. The school was very vocational, so there was sections for being a woodworker, being a metal worker, being in electronics, and being an electronic engineer. And then around about grade 10, my family moved to from the town I lived in to where I live now, which is on the west coast of Canada, and the school system was a little bit different here. They the electronics courses that were available to me were at a much lower level than what I had available to me when I first started. So uh, I, uh, I went out of that and into software development instead. How do you keep the tabs from disappearing when there are too many? How many is too many? Oh, historically, I have the uh, the history of the channel is basically that I was just creating videos that I could link to forum posts, and so as a result of that, I never really intended to be at the point where I am now. It's extremely gratifying, and I love it a great deal, I should point out. But I was just sort of doing it for, reference purposes. Hello, Bearminator. Lurking is totally a thing on YouTube. Uh, Unlike Twitch, you can even turn the volume all the way down if you don't want to hear me talking. It still counts as a view as long as it's being displayed on your screen. The groove theme. That might be a, whoops, pardon me. That might be a theme related thing, but um, definitely you can see the tabs really stacking up over there. I don't know that there's really a good solution to that particular problem. Um, Short of not having that many tabs open. There's like a minimum width that they can be, I think. Something that some people don't realize is that this little arrow over here is a list of all of the files that are open in that particular tab. So that can be a way to zero in on the one that you intended to find. I don't use that particularly frequently. Um, well, we can totally play with that too. That is what this is all about. Let's close some stuff. Groovebox and adaptive theme. Is Groovebox a theme or a color scheme? Theme, I suppose. Although if it disappears for adaptive too, that is a little bit weird. Are you using Sublime Text 4 or Sublime Text 3? Because well, I don't know that necessarily makes a difference one way or the other. We can have Sublime Text 3 going too. Uh, the tabs are a different shape. I find that these tabs tend to get a little more weird when there's more of them. But yeah. Well, I should say, to continue on with what I was saying before, in the town that I lived in, the school was very vocational, so I was doing electronics courses there, and I was sort of, at a point in those classes where one of the things that we had to do was, given just a piece of copper clad fiberglass, design our own circuit for an AM radio. You draw it on the circuit board, on the circuit path, I should say, that you want onto the board with a special marker. Use chemicals to etch away all of the copper except what's underneath of the marker that you added, and then drill out all the bits and solder all the components on. And then the final test was, could the electronics teacher tune in talk radio and hear it adequately? And so we learned how AM radios work and had to develop circuits that would receive an AM circuit or an AM transmission and amplify it enough to be able to hear it. And then I moved to where I am now, where I've lived for since that time, and the height of the electronics classes were, here's a pre-made kit for a robot, see if you can put the components on the board in the order that they're listed here, and then the robot will follow a line, which is neat, but it was very far below the level of stuff that I had already been doing, because the one school was more career focused, being in sort of like a small farming community sort of thing, which is why I switched to software development, because that was more the thing, and I really loved both of those topics. So I actually got to do more stuff here. All that is to say that I remember about capacitors and resistors and transistors and load voltages and PNP versus NPN transistors and stuff like that. But in fact, I have a solder station as well. The guitar that's hanging on the wall back there, I've spent some time rewiring it, and I have some more work to do in that regard. But I don't think I could teach anybody anything like that. There aren't any arrows to these arrows over here. Sorry, I got confused there. With the default theme, tabs were fine, and there are the arrows at the right. Yeah. So I guess a problem with Groovebox, which is this one, I guess. Sublime Text themes and color schemes with pastel, retro. Ooh, hey, pastel colors. Somebody was mentioning something about wanting pastel colored color schemes in the Discord, like earlier today or yesterday. Was that you? Let's see. Let's install the thing. Add the following to your settings file. Let's do this. Whoops, let's not do that. Let's do this. Well, if this is the theme that it's using, I see. That does indeed seem to make tabs completely disappear. Yeah, I know, right? I miss those days. I'm actually kind of, believe it or not, nostalgic for the early days of my programming experience too. As dumb as it sounds, with computers that we have that are as powerful as they are now, but the first computer that I got was a ColecoVision Atom, which, as the name suggests, is actually a ColecoVision with extra computer stuff built in. And if you're not sure what a ColecoVision is, it's like an Atari. And if you're not sure what an Atari is, it's like a Nintendo, a really low grade Nintendo. The claim to fame for the ColecoVision Atom was that it had 80 kilobytes of RAM, where Commodore 64s had 64 kilobytes of RAM. But the very first normal computer I got was at an actual IBM XT 8088 machine with a big old connector on the back for connecting a tape drive. Although I had floppy disks, I wrote stuff on that in DOS, uh, and there are songs now. Every time I listen to, or it comes up on the radio, the George Michael's CD or cassette tape at the time, Faith, the songs like, Father Figure and stuff, it just immediately transports me to those early days of high school, sitting in front of an amber colored monitor with the CGA graphics card that could display three whole colors, writing little games in Pascal. Neat. We never got to create toy CPUs in college, but we did have to design circuits for them with logic gates and whatnot. Yeah, at some point I took enough courses in the data communications and other related areas to know about things like the Hamming distance of CD, error correction, and creating simple binary adders and stuff. But I live in on the west coast of Canada in British Columbia. So currently it's 9:22 in the evening for me. Um, And unfortunately, due to the fact that my job is sort of a 9 to 5 operation, and weekend time is time that I spend with my wife, unfortunately, the only time I really have to stream is sort of this late at night, which works great, I guess, to some degree for people from India or other parts of the world that are a little ahead. But for people in my own time zone, a little bit trickier. Although I think the Bearminator is somewhere in Europe too. So there you go. Yeah, there you go. 10:50 a.m. currently. If you've never been to one of my live streams before, be prepared for me to be confused about time zones like nobody's business. I know that they exist, and I know that people are farther ahead of time than me, but I can never quite remember. Although I guess I know that, or I should know what time it was for uh, some people, because there was people were asking questions before the stream started. But in any case, um, it looks like tabs disappearing here in Groovebox is entirely related to the theme. because all those tabs, there's no, at least none that I can see, any vertical distinction between one and the next. Uh, Denmark, there you go. I knew it was somewhere in that general area because it reminds me of the Dutch, which is a place we haven't been to in a while. Man, they make a good omelet. Um, well, thanks for coming out and watching. And yes, we will be live on this channel at this time every Tuesday. Medical things notwithstanding. Every now and then, real life gets in the way. I try to minimize that as much as possible. So, okay, this is the main ski. Now, let's go back to adaptive. I would, whoops, make sure I had the right thing here. There's the same sort of thing happens here, but it's a little bit more visually distinct because you can see the actual edges of the tabs a little bit, but I don't know that there is any setting that would, oh, actually, I don't know what I did to make those buttons a different color, but I did. Oh, I bet you. Oh, I'm gonna fix that in a second too. Mm. There's totally a thing. I think. Oh wait, maybe that goes backwards. Allows tabs to scroll instead of simply shrinking. Okay, so that's probably not as the thing that I was thinking of. I had this thought that there was a setting that turns on scrolling, but I was expecting that to go the other way. I assume I have to quit and restart that. I don't use the default theme. No, I use adaptive. So this should be adaptive right now. Let's restart that just to see. So tab scrolling is, oh, I guess I should change the value. With tab scrolling turned on, you gain the ability to scroll the tab list, but if there's a lot of them, you can see them sort of stacking up on the corner. I'm not sure how well that comes across in the stream proper. There are, in this particular theme, teeny tiny little like 1 pixel lines there. If you set this to false, then scrolling isn't a thing, so all of the tabs just shrink. But if there's a lot of them, that may still cause an issue, perhaps. Or maybe not. Maybe they just keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller as they go. How many tabs can we create? I mean, at some level, those look like they were shooting off the screen, right? So yeah, now we have an issue with there being more tabs than this bar can adequately portray. So that may not be the greatest solution either. But yeah. Let's close a few of these so we can get ourselves back down. So yeah, this is indeed adaptive. I don't think I have any package dev. Let's say edit theme. So I think I might have some stuff in here. Oh yeah, this thing. There we go. That's what's in there. I was helping someone in the Discord working with a problem. So one thing that you might look into if you're using adaptive and your tabs look different than mine, except for the color of them, because that's controlled by the color scheme that you use, that maybe you have something in your theme that's changing things. Definitely, I noticed in Groovebox that it doesn't have any sort of visual edge on the tabs. If we go back to that one, it looks like there's one there, and there and there. But now that there's 2 tabs here, there's no distinction that there's 2 tabs there until you focus on one, and then there's tabs or edges, I should say. So if there were multiples of them, then yeah, once they start stacking up on the end, it's really hard to tell that they're there. I think you would have to do a tweak to the theme to give yourself a little bit of those edges on there like we see here to be able to get at that sort of action. And I imagine the same thing would be true for the, pardon me, for Sublime Text 4 as well, if you happen to be using that. Let's go ahead and quit that, come back to here. What were we doing? We were set this thing up. Let's add this stuff in. We have Lua installed, so we should be good to go. Now, we need to remember how to run Lua code too, so that's also unfortunate. Yeah, no problem. If you have any other questions, let me know. This is why I think these sort of live streams would be good for the channel at large, because there are some questions like that one where you really want to be able to sort of see what's happening and have a little bit of a back and forth, which can take more time in like comments on YouTube or in mail. A little better in Discord, but it's nice to sort of get more of a interactive back and forth. I I will be back in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. I think there may be. Yeah, I will be right back. Sorry about that. I was hearing a weird noise, which sounded like it might be my dog, but it wasn't my dog. But I think it might have been a dog out in the hallway or something. But I got to check into these things. I live in an apartment building, and it is not super late, but late enough that people are going to be slightly unhappy if there's weird dog noises going on. Okay, so we set up LSP, we have Python. So the next thing, or sorry, Lua. So the thing we're going to play with here now, getting way back to the thing that we were originally working on, is some sort of language server for Lua, right? Then there should be nothing in this particular list for Lua, but there was one for over here. So let's see. Now, Ashwin recommended this one. Have you ever tried using LSP with Lua? It should be in the list over here. Boop, boop, boo. Download the VS Code extension. Oh man. All right. I guess we got to dive in. Oh, hang on. Sorry. Let's do this. We want to keep that page open, and also we want to do a little bit of this thing because that's bright, man. That's bright. Nobody needs that to be that bright. Language server coded by Lua. Okay. How might one install something like this if you weren't using Visual Studio Code? Because I'm not installing Visual Studio Code for this operation. We might have to do something completely different. What did the instructions say? It said to download the extension. Okay, build and run standalone. I guess we probably want a little bit of that, right? Okay. Really getting into it now. Oh wait, maybe we should go back one more there. We probably need to build it before we can do that, right? So let's do that. Install Ninja. Good news, I previously installed Ninja. This is sort of the problem that I have with LSP, which I gather they're trying to make a little bit better in that there's like a lot of setup involved in something like this to set up the external server. And for people that are just getting started with learning a particular programming language, then it really raises the barrier for things. Okay, so we have Ninja. I guess I probably have that version of things. I guess we'll find out though, won't we? All right, here we go. We're going to clone a project. This is going to be exciting. We'll move this over here. Then we will run this, get ourselves some action. Alrighty. Go into it and do a little bit of the old submodule action. Right on. Submodules, everybody loves them. We're getting some clone action going. My. And we need to, well, I mean, I could write that out, but I'll just do a little bit about this. One of the nice things about build tools as a standard is that there are so many to choose from. The nice thing would be if this is a nicely seamless operation, which, hooray! There's something I was playing with earlier where the steps were clone this Git repository, run this npm command to install packages, and then you're done. Only it wasn't done because the code that it checked out actually wouldn't compile because it was referring to variables that did not exist. All right, so that looked good. And then we got to go down a couple directories and then rebuild. Interesting. I wonder if this is a bootstrappy kind of situation. I guess maybe Ninja is one of those build system tools like CMake. What I'm using here is Linux, specifically Slackware Linux, which is something that I've used for the better part of 20 years now. That's a lot of Chinese or something. Hopefully that's all okay. Basically, it is a Linux in which there is not a package dependency system as you would find with Debian or Ubuntu or Fedora. So whereas in those versions of Linux, those distributions, there's a tool that you can use to just go out to some known repository and grab packages and download them, and they're installed in one quick shot. Slackware doesn't have that to the same degree. There are packages for things that make them easier to install, but those packages don't interconnect with dependencies because the people that create it are not a huge fan of that. But that's neither here nor there. Anything we're doing here could be done anything with any sort of Linux. And LSP is a language server protocol. This is actually the stuff. No, in fact, Slackware does not have a package manager. There are package managers you can get for it. There's one called slapt-get, which is just like apt-get, but it's the Slackware one. I used that for a little bit. Uh, Slackware really eschews that in favor of, to some degree, building software yourself, which can cause problems, which is why I don't recommend it to somebody that's new to Linux. You really need to know what you're doing. Um, I used to, way back in the day, I used DOS, then I used Windows for a long while. And it wasn't until I started working at this company that I started using Linux myself because we use it in our production systems. And so I had a version of it at work that I used, and I just ended up using it. The packages that are part of the system itself, those are available as packages. Yes. So technically, you can keep it up to date by there are tools, for example, um, install package or upgrade package or remove package. Basically, the two things that are missing, such as they are, is some repository on the web that has a list of every possible package that could ever exist that this tool goes and downloads. So you can install, upgrade a package, but you have to download it yourself first. And it doesn't get into the bizarre minutia of I want to install this, but this requires three other libraries to be installed. So that's three more packages, but each one of those three packages each requires three other things that need to be installed. And then before you know it, you end up into that whole Node.js thing where you say npm install -gyo to install Yeoman, and suddenly it's downloaded 397 packages. It doesn't have that. It leaves it up to you to do that. And I think that's because the main maintainer, Patrick Volderking, if I'm remembering his name and saying it correctly, is not a fan of that because it's so hard to get dependencies right that he considered it a better idea to let humans work that out themselves. And then the other aspect of that is because not a lot of people use Slackware. Sometimes you end up compiling things yourself because there aren't ready-made packages. Although it is ridiculously easy to create them from other things. Just as an aside, if I was to go into uh, this and go into say this, I, for example, want to have Google Chrome installed. That's what I use, right? I need a Slackware package for that. Slackware creates a Debian, but there's this simple little Slack build file that does all of the work of extracting the stuff from the Debian, repackaging it as a Slackware package and dropping it, and then you can just go ahead and install it. I've been tempted to do something like that for Sublime Text, but I like to have all the different versions of it installed, so I never really went down that road. And that is also the reason why GNOME isn't a windowing system that comes with Slackware by default, because uh, for people that think that dependency systems are hard to get right and they don't really want to navigate them, your head will explode like scanners trying to build yourself a fresh copy of GNOME. Somebody somewhere decides that an icon should be slightly more roundy on one corner, and suddenly 97 libraries need to be updated as a result, kind of thing. And getting back to the other question, LSP is a, oh, sorry. And I mentioned that one. Yes, I have been a Linux guy for 20 years, give or take. Uh, I do all of my work basically on this computer. I stream from this computer. I play games on this computer as well, like Terraria and Minecraft and such. I do have a Windows machine out there in the other room, web browsing. I do gaming on that as well. And I have a Mac over there as well. It's currently running the stream. And LSP, the thing that we're originally here for, is the language server protocol. It is a system whereby there's an external program that you install, which is this Lua language server here that has the knowledge, has been specifically designed to know and understand, in this case, Lua code. So given some Lua code, it can get in there and know where functions are, what arguments things are expected to take, things like that. Uh, and that provides code intelligence like an IDE would have. And this LSP package is the Sublime Text part that talks to that particular server. LSP was, as far as I'm aware, created by Microsoft for use in Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code. So a lot of the servers that we see here are in fact written for that purpose. And the ingenious developers for the LSP package, which again, hang out in the Discord in the LSP channel if you want to play around with this and you're having problems. That's probably a good place to ask. Um, they have created a Sublime Text window on that, if you will. Okay. So this is how one would run something like this. I'm assuming we're going to need, let's do this. I'm assuming that's not on the path, right? No, it didn't install it anywhere, and I probably wouldn't expect it to. Were part of those instructions to actually install it somewhere? It built, it didn't complain. And yes, we're playing with Lua, although it occurred to me after I started installing this that I don't know that I have any Lua code laying around that this might actually be useful for, or at least Lua code that will run. But so this is the thing that we would actually do something with. Now we had to backtrack this up a step because we need to maybe do something there. But if we go back 1.4, for setting up the language server for Lua, yeah, there's been a lot of weird design decisions that they put into that, isn't there? It does seem, I can't even think of a time that I've ever used that in coding. Although I've also been uh, incredibly annoyed when I was, what year was it? The year that I did the Devember project where I made a build system for Sublime that was a remote build system that would talk to a .NET server running basically anywhere, ship it over files, execute a program on the other system, showing you on your local machine what that tool was displaying as it was executing, and then sending the results back. Uh, I used .NET 2 for that, I think, and all the files that it generated had byte order marks in the front of them, and it was extremely irritating. It has been a long time since I did anything Win32 related in any sort of meaningful sense. Discounting using C Sharp or Node.js. I guess C Sharp is probably something Win32-ish, but over there on the shelf, I have a book about Yawthik, which is the Win32 API desktop reference. Back when that was a new thing that was just coming out, when 32-bit Windows were going to be a thing. Okay. So if we follow the instructions on this, if I'm remembering correctly, we're using Sublime Text 4, so we're going to need to do something like this. And we're going to need to do LSP settings and add this bit in. I guess probably we just want this bit. Actually, we probably should have just tried it to see, right? Okay, That looks like it's probably cool. If I could maybe not do that so many times in a row, that would be lovely. So I think this probably should look a little something like this. Yeah, I'm giving myself a fit by watching that in the other window. Uh, this is the bit that we put in here. Now I need to remember where it was that I did that. Welcome back. And I am live. I am indeed. It's not Memorex, if you're young enough to remember what Memorex is. And normally I go on one of these live streams for a couple of hours, longer on Twitch. I wasn't entirely sure that I would stay on this long, but we've been having a good time. We got some good viewership. We got some nice chat going on. Why not? I'd like to at least get a little bit of this stuff going. Now, the instructions for this thing, clearly this is a thing here. Nope, it was this. This is the jiggy that we would have to run in this terminal, right? /bin linux. Uh-oh. Oh, it's in uppercase. Pardon me. Linux Lua language server. Okay, so we want part of the thing that makes creating videos. Can I try gaming? You mean like playing a game or writing a game? I'm amenable to writing a game. That's been one of my side hobbies for a while, these last couple of years. Here we go. Good grief. Let's do this. I'm going to say that this must be a little bit of this. Oh, I guess. Shoot, that's not what I meant to do. Hang on. I forgot. I did this. The path to this whole thing is this. Come on. Don't do this to me, dude. There we go. Single clicking can really cause problems. So this is the place that I installed this. I have written some games in the past. In fact, in one of the Twitch streams, I think the very first Twitch stream that I did, if you look on my Twitch channel and the very first video there, I showed some examples of a couple of the things that we did. In fact, I even put one of them up on my GitHub as well, assuming I remember that command correctly. That is the language server, and then -e, and those instructions were /main.lua. So I guess that goes here. Yes, it does. So it's the same location without the bin. Right on. This is part of. It looks like the message is not being sent properly. What you mean? The issue with creating videos for LSP, and which is one of the reasons why I sort of bumped this one down the road for the list of things, is the complications of setting this stuff up. Oh, yeah, for some reason, there's a little bit of an excessive delay between when something appears in the chat in the page and when the version of it that's inside of the browser source pulls it up. Oh, I did not see that. I may have missed that. Helper Lua LSP package. I thought that there was something like that. I'm scrolling back in the chat just to see where it was that you might have said that. Maybe it was way back there. But not everything is going to be that way. And perhaps more importantly, um, the instructions for getting started from Sublime LSP GitHub IO was to do this. So if there's a helper, the documentation should probably mention it, right? That's why I was sort of surprised because I thought that one of the things they were trying to do was make this easier to do. But the game that I like the most, that's a tricky question to answer. Usually, whatever I'm playing right now is the thing that I like the most. Trying to think of what the thing is called now. It's because it's been a little bit. Right now on my Switch, I'm playing a game called Axiom Verge. Uh, Man, I cannot for the life of me remember. Uh, Anyway, something that I come back to quite a bit is Minecraft. Yeah, I do indeed play Minecraft quite a bit. I run my own server, as a matter of fact. Yeah, so then see that's part of the reason why um, I sort of kicked LSP down the road a little bit because, well, back when I did it, I don't think they had the idea of helper things, but also someone somewhere is going to be using one of these languages, and it's nice to be able to say, I would imagine that what we have to do next is enable a server or something, right? Uh, I guess we probably want it, what, globally? Uh, is there something? Maybe not. We'll go back and look through the thing. Did that actually do a thing? I can live stream Minecraft. I don't know how exciting that would be. One thing about my Minecraft playing that probably gets a lot of people cranky is I am not down for when you die, everything that you're holding that took you forever to collect just goes flying all over everywhere, and then you have 5 minutes to try to get back to where you originally were without any equipment, trying not to get killed so you can pick it all up again. So I have keep inventory turned on, and for that reason, I'm assuming that if I was to ever live stream Minecraft, there would be a constant stream of boos and jeering coming out of the chat. Maybe. Um, do do do. That's not what I'm trying to do. If I go back one, follow the setup steps for a language server to get it set up and running. If you encounter problems, consult this. If there are no setup steps for a language server on this page, but a language server implementation exists, follow the guide for creating a client configuration. So this is why crosscode, you say? An action role-playing RPG with lots of puzzles, written entirely in HTML5. All right, well, I have this page open now and I'm looking at stuff. One of the sorts of games that I've wanted to make for a long while is an RPG type, I guess JRPG, because I spent a lot of time in my youth playing Final Fantasy, Final Fantasy 2, Final Fantasy 3, which is really Final Fantasy 6. If you're in the US, Final Fantasy 7, and then later on, uh, the page that Ben pointed out is this one, I'm assuming. It's a retro-inspired 2D action RPG set in the distant future. I like the distant future. One of my favorite RPGs is um, Chrono Trigger. Yeah, let me do this for just a second. This is the page as a whole, so you can get a sense for what this particular game is. Demo offline outside of the browser. I assume this is the game that he's talking about. It looks quite cool. I will definitely check that out. Love an RPG. I've been playing a lot lately on my phone of a game called oops, that's too far. High Rise, Android game, sort of like a vertical 3D Tetris-y kind of thing. Let's go ahead and stick that back. Flash of white, my apologies. Maybe now that it reloaded that, it'll be a little bit faster. So I will definitely check that out. Now, is there something down here that says Lua, do a thing? Or was that the page that I was looking at? No, that's download the VS Code extension. So if there's a helper package for this, the documentation does not say anything. This is just a list of more of these bad boys. And that's it. So getting started. Okay, here it says for a few languages. And Lua does not appear to be in that list. Unless I'm blind, which I have been known to be. I would imagine it does. Yeah, my keyboard also makes sound. Incidentally, I have winging my way right now a new headset mic, mod mic that I can attach onto the headset, which in theory should increase the quality of the audio. If not for live streams, then at least for videos. It's more of a professionally type mic. We'll see what the ambient sound of the room is like. I also have been playing around with using just a standard mic, but I don't have a shock mount for it yet. So that is unlikely to be super helpful. So I did the first thing, installed a language server from the list of language servers, ensuring that it can be started from the command line. Well, I suppose it can be because it's given a full explicit path to the thing, right? Oh, thank you. It's not quite where I want it to be, but it's not bad. I wish it was. Uh, there's some. Can't think there's some, not, I wouldn't say audio issues, but it uses, this is a gaming headset, so it uses noise cancellation, uh, which drops some frequencies that I can usually even out a little bit with EQing, but I don't have the ability to do that currently because OBS crashes in a giant ball of flames. According to this, after I've installed the language server, I should be able to enable language server globally. And I would expect it to be one of these things, right? I'm not really, I'm not going to have time to play a game tonight, unfortunately. After the stream is done, I pretty much have to do a little bit of housework and go to bed to wake up for work tomorrow. But I would definitely mention something like that on my Twitch stream. I have, in fact, thought of that, but it was a little. I even experimented with a few things, as a matter of fact. One of which was Jack, because it's supposed to be ready made for that, and sending the audio through Reaper first. But the configuration of that stuff was a little hairy. And every time I think of it, it's like the day of a stream, and I know that if I do something, it's probably going to screw stuff up. But that is a thing that I would like to fiddle with. I've also, you know, I'm confused why for this particular headset, if I unplug it, Pulse Audio stops seeing it, and if I plug it in, Pulse Audio sees it. But any other headset, when I plug it in, it's not detected unless I restart the Pulse Audio server, including the very first time that I did it. Seems a little weird. What's this thing called? Is this not the way this configuration is supposed to look? Because clearly it doesn't seem to. The client should be named Lua LS, right? If there was something in here called clients. Configuration must have the following structure. It's named clients. It has a that. It's enabled. It has the command. So, those are the defaults. I'm not seeing anything else in here. So that's sort of weird. Let's quit and restart because I did not do that after I installed the package, and maybe that's something that's required. Who can say? Mm-mm-mm. No errors to speak of. All right, so I don't entirely understand why I did a thing and it does not seem to do anything. Is this maybe not correct? I could buy that. I could buy that I perhaps did not set that up correctly. Let's bring this over here. Mm-mm-mm. And this. I mean, that really looks like a server that's doing something. Am I supposed to start the server manually for this? It doesn't look like it because it looks like this is trying to do a thing. My daily routine, I wake up ridiculously early in the morning and have breakfast, and then I take my dog for a walk, followed by going for a 5 or 6 mile walk myself, and then I come and sit at this desk for several hours working. And while I'm working, I also follow the Sublime Text Discord. You can see that right up there. There's stuff happening in, well, not that Discord, but other Discords at the moment. I also check the forum on a regular basis and Stack Overflow to see if anybody's asking questions about Sublime that I can help them with. And then at the end of the day, well, it depends. On Tuesdays, I live stream here on this channel. On Wednesdays and Fridays, I stream on Twitch. And other days, I work on videos for the channel and things of that nature. I live a very humdrum life, as these things go. Which I have to say wasn't super impacted by COVID to some degree because we never really went to too many places anyway. I'm going to do that and then bring it back just so that it's all in one window. So After you have installed the language server, which is what I did, then the LSP settings need to be configured to enable communications between LSP and that server for suitable file types. LSP ships with default configurations for a few language servers, but these need to be enabled before they will start. To globally enable a server, open the command palette and choose Enable Language Server Globally. This will add an enabled true to the corresponding language server setting under the client's key. Maybe that part already happened. Maybe I don't need to do that part because there's already an enabled true inside of there. I'm pretty happy with my life. I mean, I'd be happier if I was independently wealthy, then I wouldn't have to work and I could spend more time playing with Sublime Text and helping people out on the forum and Stack Overflow and YouTube and stuff and live streaming. That would be cool, but we uh, we we haven't managed to hit that lottery just yet. My family members, well, I have a wife and I have a dog that's currently snoring under the desk something fierce, who miraculously didn't bark at the noise that was coming out of the hallway. All right, so I'm gathering that, in fact, the enable globally thing wasn't something that I actually had to do because that's already happening. So, is there some sort of LSP panel down here? I guess I need some sort of Lua code to be able to do something, huh? I do not have any children, no, unless you count my dog, but not everybody does. Boo, boo, boo. Ah. Once upon a time, I was making a Dragon Warrior clone, the original Dragon Warrior for NES or Dragon Quest, depending on. Uh, and boop, there's the code. I made level editing tools in Lua, apparently. Don't remember that. It's been quite some time. Do, do, do. Well, that's the source for stuff that's probably not that interesting. Once upon a time, I used Blackmagic Fusion to create my thumbnails, and I had a script for that. Do, do, do. I don't know how strictly necessary this is. All right, something's happening. It says Lua LS down in the corner of the window. So we have ourselves some LSP action here. So that's good. That's pretty good. So what we learned there is apparently there are some helper packages for some servers, but they don't seem to be listed, at least in that documentation. But they are currently working on that sort of thing. So maybe that is a miss that's not there right now because it hasn't been pushed up or something. I think having the documentation hosted on this particular site is relatively new as well. Um, it mentions having to do a thing which is potentially not something that you have to do for depending on how you set it up. Um, is something supposed to happen? This I am not sure of. None of these are actually going to be invoked from anywhere, I would imagine, right? Uh, does the file have to be stored on disk in order to be handled? I would imagine. Well, I'm planning on creating some videos for Sublime Merge, but apart from that, on this particular channel, that's probably what we're going to see. This thing's related to Sublime Text, using Sublime Text, writing packages for Sublime Text, and Sublime Merge because it's related, coming from the same developers and having a lot of the same functionalities back and forth between the two. Um, is That's pretty much where I'm niched down right now. I don't know that I really have the expertise into much of other things that would help too much. I mean, never say never, but I don't want to break the channel focus because I'm sort of in a situation now where uh, YouTube, I think, recommends me for Sublime Text videos because that's the only thing that's on my channel. And as far as I can tell from various training things I've read, you niching down like that. Um, there we go. Now we're getting some action. Niching down like that really helps the algorithm sort of direct people to you. If you have a channel that has a little bit of Minecraft and a little bit of Sublime Text and a little bit of something else, then those videos are not quite as discoverable as a channel that's just focused on a particular kind of topic. Although gaming can be a specific kind of topic in that regard. So we can see LSP functionality happening right here in just this simple little thing. I should be able to run this. Um, Maybe I should probably set the build system to be correct, huh? I don't think there is well, there's probably a build system for Lua built in. We'll set that to automatic. It was probably set to something else. We're going to run that one. And there we go. So are we running ourselves some Lua code that we installed? Yes. And we get some extra action here. Uh, we get to see these related code blocks. Um, when we say we're going to call factorial, this is telling us what is being passed in here. And note that it's able to tell us some information that the thing that is passed in is a number, which it can gather, I imagine, because of this. One of the things about Lua is it doesn't have a typing. It's kind of like Python, I guess you would say. It's not strongly typed. There are booleans, numbers, strings, objects, which can be dictionaries and arrays. User data, because it's a language that's meant to be built in, but you don't specify when you define a function that it takes a particular thing. It's up to you to determine that. I could make different channels for different things, but it's actually a fair amount of work just to make the videos that I make on this channel here. So between it can take anywhere from 1 to 2 days to do everything necessary to get ready to record stuff for a video on the channel, which involves, I don't write scripts, but I do write bullet pointed lists of the topics that I want to hit, because I don't have any way to teleprompt myself, if you will, to have, you know, say cue cards or something. And I definitely don't have the time to try to memorize a script for things. So I do bullet points of what it is that I want to cover, and I need to anything that you see me do in a video, I test extensively to make sure that it will actually work for everybody and not just me, which also involves doing it in plain vanilla installs and not just my own, to make sure that I don't have something set up that's going to cause a roadblock for somebody else that is doing stuff. So I have a separate user on my system just for that. And then it takes time to do the actual recordings of the video, sweeten the audio, combine everything together, assemble the videos, and edit them. Recording the actual screen recording parts, which is sometimes separate. More often than not lately, I've been doing that as a separate thing, which makes the video shorter and tighter if I can talk about a thing and then fill in the video footage afterwards. So in that regard, it can take, a while, maybe 3 to 4 days, depending on the video, to end, not like 8 hours a day or anything of time spent putting into one of these videos. So I don't really have the time to do that, and then also have another channel for unrelated stuff. which isn't really my goal. I mean, I'm not on YouTube to make $1 million. I'm expecting that that's going to be the job of the lottery someday. So, oh, I am there's I would imagine that a lot of people making videos. I mean, I paint that like I've got like sweat running down my brow and stuff. I could probably get it done in half the time if I just spent a whole day doing, like if I just spent 2 days just doing nothing but working on a video. But that kind of gets in the way for me a little bit because I do like to, as I said, I look at the part of my daily routine, as a matter of fact, is while I'm eating breakfast, I'm looking at the forum to see if there are any questions that maybe I can answer, or Stack Overflow if there's something there. I keep up with the Discord, including while I'm out on a walk. I can see conversations that are happening in there. I've been known from time to time to stop under an awning or at a street corner and answer someone's question before I go on. So I got that going on. I don't want to disrupt that. Um, so yeah, between that and creating videos, people that are more dedicated to doing YouTube full time can spend more time doing that. But I have all these other things that I'd like to do as well, which is why I'm really focused in. But thank you for the kind words, though. I appreciate it. If you know somebody that uses Sublime and they're not following me, feel free to poke them in the arm from a safe distance and tell them they should be checking me out. And on Twitch as well. Um, Ninth standard currently, is that like a grade, like a ninth grade sort of thing? Pre high school or junior high, as we would say. Neat. To bring everything sort of full circle with what it was that we were fiddling with in this, the things that the LSP package can do for you are things like this. If I hover over this, it can tell me that this is a function. It can take me to the place where it happens to be defined. It can show me other places where it's actually being used, which is in the place that it's defined, and in this place where it's called recursively from inside of itself. And down here, that's a nice little thing. I could rename this, say maybe to factor instead, and it knows to replace all of the things in all of the places. And these are the sorts of things that aren't possible out of the box with Sublime per se, because its understanding of this source code is based on a lexical analysis and not something more in depth. So it recognizes that this is a function name, for example, because it comes after the word function, but it doesn't know that this is the definition of it knows it's a function because it's being called, but it doesn't necessarily know that this is where it came from inherently. The symbol information in the index does provide that, but information like knowing that this takes an argument, and this is also ish an issue that I have with this sort of functionality. This is mad because factorial factor is an undefined global. And I agree, it is, but that doesn't appear anywhere inside of this file. Um, so I would sort of expect that to work. I think I made it mad by undoing to close and reopen the file, and then it's happy about it again. Uh, so that's kind of a weird thing as well. And it knows that this needs to be a number. I would imagine I can throw some documentation comments in there as well. So yeah, that is LSP in a nutshell. Now, this is a rather underwhelming example, and we were doing a lot of other stuff here during this, but let's go ahead and really got to turn the volume down on that thing. Uh, this is the LSP package, right? So we could see in a small code base like this, not the make or break of anything in the universe for a simple factorial program, but if you had a multi-line Lua or multi-line, a multi-file Lua program, then this server is calculating all of this information from all over the whole project and provide all sorts of information. So it can tell you where a function is called, even if you're not editing the current file, and all that sort of cool code intelligence. And the fact that the ability to know about the structure of a particular language is abstracted away into this external process. Here, the thing we compiled and set up ourselves, although perhaps maybe we didn't need to do that. Maybe there's an easier way to pull that off. Means that this is fully extensible in the same way that Sublime comes with packages to support syntax highlighting for various packages out of the box, but you can install extra syntax highlighting that's made after the fact, and it uses the same tool set as the built-in packages to be able to provide things like syntax highlighting and simple navigation of symbols, auto-completion, and stuff like that. LSP does the exact same thing, but on, say, a deeper basis. It has something that can really understand the code and provide problem analysis, like telling you the thing we just saw where things may or may not exist, which makes it a pretty handy package, I would say. I think we're probably going to need to play with this a little bit more before I could create a video, and possibly we're looking at something that is more of a series of videos, because one of those would easily be installing the package, but the other part is knowing how to configure the thing, which might be actually finding the actual server and installing it, unless there's a helper for it. And that's something that we need to look into too, because it didn't seem immediately obvious to me. Now, granted, I'm sitting here in a live stream looking at the documentation, so it's quite likely that I missed something there in that, because I was reading and paying attention to the chat, and I wasn't just sitting here working like I would be if I was doing this myself. So entirely possible there's user error on my part. But this is the sort of thing that we want to be working for here on the channel. This particular package, setting it up, perhaps other packages as well. And that's what we're going to do in future live streams on the channel. We're going to find packages that people are using, or maybe they should be using, and not most not should be, but could be using, and learn a little bit more about them so we can create those kinds of videos. Yeah, exactly. LSP could very well be a whole playlist of stuff. I can imagine just a simple, so you want to use LSP, here's what LSP is. So, short little movie. I do play piano a little bit. I'm more of a guitar person, but that was actually given to me by the people that lived across the hallway were moving, and they did not want to take it with them. And they asked, would you like to have this piano? And then I grabbed some money out of my wallet and threw it at them and tried to slide it down the hallway into my apartment before they changed their mind. And then they came back and gave me the money back and said, no, you can just have it. We don't want it, but we know you're a musician, so you take it. And then they helped me move it inside. I will not be playing guitar on my YouTube stream. It's been a while since I've played anything more than just simple licks and riffs, but guitar is I am I like playing guitar for myself. I never wanted to be the next Jimi Hendrix or whatever. Um, let me check something here. Um, uh, ba, ba, ba. I'm gonna check something. I have a feeling. Nope, nope, nope. This yeah. And I don't know how well this will work because this is a very, very old thing. But, and by very old, I mean like my dog is 10 years old. We had him when we moved into this apartment. This video was recorded in the place we lived before we lived here. In my first year of learning how to play guitar, the the end of my first year, I think. Yeah. Uh, so we're talking like 15 years ago. Um, but that's an example of something that I would like to play. Yes, LSP, the package that we're looking at here is essentially IntelliSense in Sublime Text. Yes, which is why it's something that needs to come to the channel, I think, because this is the sort of thing that people are excited to see and to want to use. And in fact, it uses literally the exact same technology and backend software as Visual Studio Code does. Closes immediately. It should be a video file that's going to try to download. Um, I'm not sure offhand. It may require. It's so old it may in fact require Flash to view. I'm not 100% sure. If you're downloading the video, then yes, that totally is me from like 15 years ago. Boop, boop, boop. Maybe even longer. Special Christmas update. It could be as far back as 2008 in a red shirt. Yeah, it's a video file, but it's an older video file. Uh, you used to have to use Flash Player to be able to play it. So it's me playing Silent Night twice. I recorded myself playing one part and playing the other part, and then stuck both of them together. And then for good measure, I'm also humming along as well. Um, Based on that, if you found that interesting, because it's sort of a sharing stream, eh, or is that the one that I shared? Or did I share? No, I shared yesterday. Pardon me. Um, you're making me feel super old. That is, sorry, I didn't share the link. I thought I did. This is Yesterday by the Beatles. This arrangement is in G. The Paul McCartney plays it in F, and it's also arranged for a solo guitar and is a little bit more simplistic than the standard version of this stuff. Uh, Another thing that if that one works, this is the thing that I thought that I was sharing. You let me send this, my friend. This one is Silent Night. Well, it sort of depends on the stuff, realistically. Some things are still tricky. I guess hard is a relative term for things because for, learning your very first programming language when you've never done anything like that before is hard, right? There's, depending on the language and how much time you spend, how much you understand right away versus having to study a little bit, the difficulty level could change. But you're learning a lot of stuff when you're creating this stuff for you're learning for the very first time. You're learning the structure of a program and the syntax that you use to define something like a factorial function, but you're also learning how to create an algorithm to solve a problem. You need to be able to analyze what it is that you're trying to do and break it down into manageable steps and then solve those steps one at a time to come up with the ultimate solution. And that can be hard when you're first learning how to do it, but it gets easier over time because you get that experience level. And then when you pick up another programming language, then it's going to be a lot easier because what you need to learn is a different syntax. You need to learn, for example, that in Python you use def and the name of a function instead of function and the name of a function to define one. But otherwise, a lot of the stuff you know already applies. And there's, as you're breaking down problems to be able to solve them, you find after a while that there's a lot of common things that you can draw on. So whereas you might really struggle the very first time you do something in a programming language, 5 years down the line or 2 years down the line, you can be at a point where someone says, I want you to write a program that does this. And you're in a position to just look at it and inherently know, okay, I don't know everything about what I'm going to need to do here, but I'm definitely going to do this and this and this because I have enough experience to know. So in that regard, that does get a lot easier over time. But there are some bits that are still a little bit tricky. The more experience you have to draw on for actually doing stuff, a lot easier things become. You start running into new technologies or new ways of doing something that are new to you, but you have the knowledge and experience of things you've done before to be able to extrapolate how things probably work, which can give you a leg up. I am however old a person is if they were born in 1974, which I think from the start of the stream was 47, although it's not my birthday yet, so I guess I'm probably 46. I don't really know my age per se. Age ain't nothing but a number, and I don't act it anyway, so what's the big deal? I'm definitely not good enough at music to make a music channel. Uh, in fact, for the longest time, I went more off the rails on music theory than I did actually playing. I have a lot of books on that over there. So, yeah, I wouldn't say programming is easy. It's definitely not super hard. I say some things are. I enjoy the problem solving nature of it. And I also tend to play games that to some degree are problem solving type games. Like I'm definitely interested in the one that Ben mentioned earlier in the stream, Crosscode, the game that I'm playing on my phone, which is a puzzle game as such. Portal, stuff like that. Although I do like Minecraft, not necessarily a puzzle game per se. There's just something sort of relaxing about finding resources and collecting them and using them to build stuff. I don't really understand it. About my school life, well, I went to school. I wasn't the greatest studier. My favorite classes were math and physics, which was mostly to prepare me for a career in electronics and electrical engineering that I didn't end up going into. But it turns out that knowing about those things, well, not physics per se, but math, it really does you well in the field of computer science. Um, what do we got? What do we got? This screen looks a little bit different than I'm used to. Um, yeah. I'm hiding behind the chat. Pardon me. I think we should probably call it for the night. It is quite late. I normally do these for a couple hours. This was the inaugural session for this. So we're probably going to cut her off here. Now, remember, I stream on Twitch as well. I use Sublime Text for stuff that I'm doing because when I stream on Twitch, I'm doing software development type things, which could be something Sublime Text related, could be anything, including game type stuff as well. Remember, you can also subscribe to the channel to get regular tutorial videos and to know when these videos are going live. Keep in mind, if you have any questions about Sublime Text like we have had here in the chat tonight, you can send those over on Twitter. I'm in the Sublime Text Discord forum, stuff like that, and we can answer those in a live stream. I'm going to try also to gather some of the questions that are being asked of me throughout the week in the various places that people ask me questions to do at the beginning of the live stream, like we did today with the questions about me, because those are the sorts of things that get asked quite a bit. And lastly, before I jump off, remember this live stream replay is going to remain as a public video on the channel. You'll be able to find it in the video section or the upload section for 24 hours. Around about 8 p.m. tomorrow, which is the time that this started, I'm going to move it to be unlisted, and it'll be in a playlist on the main channel. You see it right at the very top under playlists under YouTube Live. That's just to make sure that having a longer video like this doesn't tank the channel when people maybe are not interested in watching 3 hours of chatting and stuff. But I do want to make it available for people that might have missed the stream. So that's all we have for tonight. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. We had a great time here, and I will see you next week or on Twitch. Have a sublime day.